What's up? Welcome to episode number 125 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choi. If you're new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, most often comedians and other artists and entertainment types about their lives and careers. The conversation is casual, but I also ask everyone to highlight the people they love, who they admire, who've influenced them, inspired them, or supported them. For more, check out peoplewelove.podcast.com. The show is on YouTube. Just search People We Love Podcast. And the Instagram handle is at People We Love Podcast. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter too, at Adam Choi, if you want to follow me. And please remember to tap subscribe or follow on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. And of course, 5-star positive reviews on iTunes are greatly appreciated as well. So today's guest is comedian, paralegal, and vice chair of the Libertarian Party of California, Rachel Nix. Growing up an only child and a news junkie, eventually Rachel herself transitioned into a new gender and a new political identity as well, going more from a Republican to a Libertarian. But long before then, Rachel was an accomplished Boy Scout, a strong leader who tells me about a bunch of people she admires. She recalls the profound moment when she realized stand-up comedy itself was a genre, when she first heard the comedy of the late, great John Pinette. But there's a lot packed into this one, so let's just get started. Here's Rachel Nix. So it's good to see you today, Rachel Nix. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, how are you holding? Oh, yeah. How are you holding up during whatever year this is?
It's only early February. Been a better time than the last couple of years have been. I lost. Good. Yeah, and when COVID started, I had 3 jobs. I lost all of them in the course of a week.
On purpose, or they were taken?
No, because of COVID. Like,
oh yeah,
I got furloughed, or like at a law firm I worked at, the courts got shut down. So there was like, once we did like whatever work we had left, there was nothing left to do. So then I didn't have that job, and then retail was closed. I didn't have that job. I'm not going to name any of the specific places I worked at, but yeah, so I pretty much lost all of them in the course of a month. And it was the month after I had just signed a 12-month lease onto my apartment. So, yeah, so I had to pay like 11 months out of savings, and that was rough. And then last year I had a job for like half the year, a little more than half the year, but I didn't like it. So, I mean, it was good to have the job, but I wasn't mentally very happy with it. But this year, off to a good start so far. I had 2 job interviews this week, so woo.
Good luck. I'm glad to hear things are getting better. Yeah. Sounds like it. Sorry, it's been a tough couple of years. It's been a tough couple of years or so for many people.
Oh yeah,
all of it. None of their.
Don't mean to play the victim here too much.
No, I was gonna say all of it. None of your fault or anyone's fault, and I'm sure we're going to get apologies from the powers that be for unnecessarily locking us down for 2 years. I'm sure I'll
be like 70 years from now or so.
Yeah, I doubt it's ever coming. That, I'm not waiting on apologies, but we can get into your life, and you could tell me a little bit about your background and I asked for people's like earliest memories, like even like things, if anything jumps out even before like 5 years old, but you could tell me about your family and where you grew up and real early memories, sounds, images, or whatever that jumps out at you, and I'll jump in here and there.
Yeah, well, I was actually born in North Carolina. People don't know that a lot. But I've pretty much grown up in California my whole life, with a short stint in Massachusetts, and then I went to college on the East Coast. I'm actually repping Fordham shirt right now.
Yes, I've seen that in your bio. That's about, I don't know much about your background either, like where you're from and all this stuff. So this will be new for me.
Yeah. So I spent most of my life here. I do like the East Coast more, though, I gotta say. Let's see. I'm not sure what my earliest memory is exactly. I remember the first time I sneezed. I remember where I was. I was staying at it's the same house I live in now. Yeah, that's right. I'm 27. I live with my parents. I'm doing fantastic. I remember, yeah, but I remember my first nightmare also. It was about the, you ever seen the movie The Brave Little Toaster?
Oh, maybe not.
Okay, it was this old Disney movie, animated from like the 80s or so, and there's this really horrifying clown in it. And my first nightmare was about that clown, and it happened because my grandfather was babysitting me, and he put me to bed and then he closed the door. I was not the person that slept with the door to the room closed. It was supposed to be open and it was closed, and I just was like too polite to say anything. So then I had a nightmare about that clown, and it was a big fiery inferno with this horrifying clown there. I'm not scared of clowns. It's just that one specifically, and I remember that so vividly still. And I was 3 years old when that happened.
I'm glad to bring up the happy times.
Yeah. Let's see what else. I went to school, as many people do as a child. I was homeschooled for a year when we lived in Massachusetts, because my family wanted to do like traveling and exploring and whatnot.
Interesting.
Went to an all boys Catholic high school, which tons of great memories for that for somebody like me. And then went off to Fordham for college, which is in the Bronx. It's a Jesuit university there. I had a great time. Then came back to California after that. Briefly worked in China in between those two. That's pretty much been my life. I mean, we can get into more specifics of stuff later. That was a
Sure.
very general rundown.
Yeah, the overview. When did you move from? Because did you start in? You're born in Carolina, North Carolina, I think you said, and then you were in Massachusetts, and then California after that.
Carolina, California, Massachusetts, California, New York, California.
Okay, so you kind of jumped around. And a lot of this jumping around, I'm guessing, happened from like, up until you finished high school kind of thing.
Well, Carolina to California, I was 1, so like that barely even counts. Massachusetts was 3rd grade, and then New York was college. So
mostly
more like 3 times in the first few years, and then not again until college.
I see. So you spent most of your time in California, in the LA area?
Yeah. Same house, same town. Even the in between to Massachusetts, we just rented out our house to some friends. So pretty much lived in the same house my whole life.
Yeah. You said you liked the East Coast more, and I kind of thought you were from the East Coast, maybe because I knew you went to Fordham, but you have like more of an East Coast vibe.
Yeah.
Is it because you're down to earth, or seem down to earth? Is that why you don't?
I think it's just I like seasons. I like Christmas a lot.
Yeah.
I like being cold. I do really well in cities, and there's a lot more cities on the East Coast, or at least
real cities.
There's a lot more within a much smaller area.
Right.
I adapt really well to them. Like I'll get off the plane and get onto the subway system, and I just immediately, I'll make some social faux pas here and there, but I just kind of do what everyone else is doing, and then within a week I'm yelling, I'm walking here at taxis. So
there you go. Yeah, it suits you, or seems to suit you, like the more intimate cities that are more crowded, even to some degree.
Yeah.
Did you say you had siblings?
No, I am an only child. That is, I didn't mention that.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, no, I've had fish. I had a dog growing up. I've got another dog now. Those are the only siblings I've ever had. Yeah.
What about when you were in elementary school? What kind of stuff were you into? What kind of kid were you? Like, what do you recall from the elementary school age days?
So I was a real goody two shoes growing up. I remember that because I remember I had a mental list of all the kids in my class who were like the good people and the bad people.
Wow.
Like there was this one kid, I won't name last names, but there was this one kid in my class named Ryan, and I was like, oh, he's a bad boy. And I didn't mean bad boy in the sense where like, oh yeah, you're a bad boy. You drive a motorcycle, wear a leather jacket. Like, no, he was like he's a bad person because he goes to the principal's office all the time. But I was pretty good. The only time I ever got sent to the principal's office as in the first few years was in the year 2000, when I got into a fight with this girl in my class about whether or not Bill Clinton was a liar and had committed perjury. I didn't know what I was arguing about. I was just regurgitating whatever I'd heard my parents saying. And she was doing the same for whatever she'd heard her parents saying. So we got into like a screaming match over whether or not Bill Clinton could be trusted. I got sent to the principal's office for that.
That's funny. Kids really do parrot their parents and things they see on television. It reminds me, because I interviewed a comedian a while back on the podcast, and he was saying how he was always into stand-up even before he understood the jokes. He would watch Jay Leno's monologue, and then for his parents and their friends, like do Monica Lewinsky jokes for his parents' friends, and had no idea what the hell he's saying. But
That's awesome.
but but instinctually, even if you don't understand politics or comedy or any sort of adult topics, you kind of instinctually, I think, as a kid, know what's interesting, funny, what's cool, what the adults are talking about, versus what the kids are talking about. Like you gravitate towards like.
I was a news junkie as a kid. I remember like I wasn't allowed. I mean, I could watch some TV, but my parents were pretty strict on how much I could watch. So, but it was like fine if I watched the news because that was, educational or whatever.
Yeah, it was still news then.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember like watching the 9/11. I remember standing and I remember this so specifically. My mom says I remember it incorrectly, but I was there and she wasn't. So, who's right? I remember the morning of 9/11 at my school, like at our morning assembly, I was like, why isn't the principal saying anything about what happened in New York? And I was like, now I get it. It's like, yeah, why would he bring that up to a bunch of 6-year-olds? But I mean, there are ways to do it. Maybe not a couple hours after it happened. I guess I was, I wasn't an adult at the time. I'm sure they handled it the best they could. But anyway, I was a kind of a political nerd. I didn't.
In elementary school.
Oh yeah, no, I was a huge political junkie in elementary school, like in 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade, I want to say. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but it was all the same school. So we had a school-wide poll of like who should win the presidency for 2008, and I don't remember if this was before or after they'd picked the official nominees or whatnot, but it came down to like. I mean, the people from 2008. So Obama was like the main Democrat, and then McCain and the others for the Republicans. And I campaigned throughout the school, not like handing out buttons or anything, but like talking him up. And I got Mike Huckabee to be the second place politician. For
a lot has changed since 2008 for you politically, I would say.
Yeah, I was always a political junkie, but my values have completely changed. In most things, there a couple things here and there would probably be the same, but I was a hardcore neocon. But I mean, I was raised in the fires of 9/11. That was an unfortunate pun there, but
oh man.
I was thinking like trial by fire, but
that's not any better. We're going sideways a little bit. So
yeah, my dad was a firefighter, and no, but I mean, I was raised in like the area where it was the Bush years. It was real popular to be a neocon, so that was just.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and your family was more on the conservative side, and
my
and the only TV they let you consume was news. So like. I guess it kind of made sense that you were a political person from an early age and interested in current events and news. I guess because either you're going to embrace it or you're going to be like really reject it early on. And it sounds like you at least embraced it, or just like that's all you knew. Maybe that was your reality to some degree.
Yeah, it pretty much was that. That was the reality of my life. I mean, that's not to say that I didn't watch any cartoons growing up or whatnot, but I don't have. There were certain cartoons I wasn't allowed to watch. Like I wasn't allowed to watch Rugrats or like Fairly Odd Parents was questionable. And I mean, these are the shows that were on when I was growing up. Basically, anything on Disney Channel was fine. Anything else was like suspect or just a hard no. So I didn't have a lot of the same shared memories that other people have. Like I'll see memes. It's like I get the memes. I recognize the shows, but they're not quite as nostalgic for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say what is why no Rugrats? Is this like it's two questions. Why no Rugrats, and does this sort of strict TV, what you're allowed to watch and not watch, does that come from like a religious influence or something like that?
Yes, actually. So the reason not Rugrats was because Angelica was like a bully and had a bad attitude, and I guess they were worried that I would take on those qualities or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the reason was it was a lot of the conservative religious upbringing. Like one thing that my dad used to always say when I'd be watching something, he'd be like, "That's not very Christian," and I'd be
Wow.
like, "All right." So if there was a certain bar of how Christian, how not Christian a show could be, and then that was where the line was drawn. So on that note, I did watch a lot of VeggieTales growing up. So
Yeah. I wonder if my parents would have. I never remember my parents walking into it. I never remember my parents walking into a room and saying, "This show you're watching is not Jewish enough." It was probably a Christmas movie produced by all Jews, most likely. Is like what was.
Well, I mean, it's Hollywood. It's all Jewish anyway. So.
Right. Is this going to be canceled, or is this going to make it to past the algorithms? I haven't had
the Seinfeld growing up.
I haven't had too many or really any issues with like censorship in my podcast, which are not really political, but yeah. We'll push those censors a little bit, maybe.
I just won't say anything about vaccine pro or con. We'll just not even.
Yeah, I'll be sure to splice it in a way that makes us get removed. Interesting. What about your grades at school? What kind of like student were you up into middle school or elementary school? What kind of student?
Yeah, up until fifth grade, I was a great student. Made honor roll consistently, either A's and B's or all A's, and then fifth grade sharp decline. And I think that's because I just didn't get interested in doing work, and there was a lot of distractions going on in home and other issues that were happening. And I just wasn't. I didn't commit to being a good student, and it was one of those things also where I had done so well up until that point. I was like, well, I don't have to try. So then I didn't try, and then all the teachers really liked me except for one. I don't even remember her name, and I don't mean that to be mean. It's just that we didn't know her name at the time either because it was like really hard to pronounce. So she was like, "Oh, just call me Mrs. E," and I have no idea what her actual name was to this day. But yeah, then that trend pretty much continued until my junior year at college. And my junior year at college, all of a sudden, I like figured out how to be a good student again. And I failed a class most semesters in high school and college up until junior year. And then junior year, I went back to like A's and B's. And I think part of that is because by that point in college, I was only taking classes that I wanted to take. I didn't have to do like the elective stuff where it's like, I don't see any point in doing this. I'm not interested. By that point, I was like, I had picked all these classes. They were all electives for my political science major, economics minor. So like I cared and I put in the effort, and I had picked all the professors that I liked or had already had for two other classes and stuff like that. So also started exercising, and I feel like that probably helped because I started caring about my health, which in turn helped my brain function.
That makes sense. Your brain's part of your body, as far as
I mean, I got the blood flowing again. I got I mean, I was in college, so obviously I was drinking a lot, but I was also like going to the gym for 2 hours a day. So it was like it was okay to it was fine for me to drink because I
our
was
metabolism
seeing good results. So
our metabolisms are better back
then
too.
And I didn't party or anything. I was never a partier. People would, like, oh, I would go to like my friends' dorms and we'd pregame and then be like, all right, so where are we going for the party after this? Like who's throwing a party? And then that would be the point where I was like, I'm out. And I would go to the late night food place on campus, get myself a chicken wrap and go back and watch Netflix or Saturday Night Live or something like that.
Yeah, stuff that you couldn't watch growing up.
Right. Well, I could watch Hey Arnold at my grandparents' house because they didn't know about all these rules. They also, their cable package had Toon Disney, which my parents didn't. So like my parents didn't even know about all those shows, which were all fine. I mean, Disney was pretty safe across the board. But yeah, anyway, I've like, we talked about cartoons. I have this really, for some reason, really strong connection between Hey Arnold and watching it like while lying on my grandparents' bed because they had a TV in their room, and I don't know, fun thing I like to reminisce on every now and then.
Yeah, for sure. I got it. So your grandparents are not real Christians. Understood.
Well, they were. It's just that they weren't as strict on that sort of stuff. Like my I had this random memory of my grandpa telling me that his favorite show was Pinky and the Brain. which was so like I watched tons of Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain at my grandparents' house because he loved that show.
They live nearby, your grandparents?
They lived in Long Beach.
Not too far. What are their names?
I guess people watching this don't know where I live, but yeah, it's not super far from where we're at.
What are your grandparents' names?
Those two, their names were Ray and Rose. They unfortunately both passed away, but
I'm sorry.
That's all right. It was their time. The grandmother passed a while ago, so.
Do you have other memories besides watching TV at their house with them and fun memories?
Yeah, my grandpa used to buy me blueberry muffins all the time, and I think that's why I got so fat.
Also, you're gonna blame other people for your problems.
Yes.
I see how that works.
Yes. No problem is ever my fault.
You know, you're the only person I know that likes blueberry muffins. That's not true. What I'm saying,
Really?
what I mean, well, it's I get fooled by them, and I think they're chocolate chips. So just the side of a blueberry muffin is kind of disappointing. But maybe I'll give them another look. I always think I'm like, oh, I just would rather have a chocolate chip muffin. This is some fake ass chocolate chip muffins. That's what I associate with blueberry.
It's not like it's a bad product that you end up with, though.
No, that's true.
It's not like you expected that and then it was a bran muffin or something like that.
Yeah, you just can't compete with chocolate. Chocolate is very hard to compete with anything less. It's going to be disappointing if you're expecting chocolate. What about your grandmother? What do you recall about her?
Yeah, she was she supported my being a fan of SpongeBob a lot. That was something. I mean, I wasn't really. I'm trying to think of how old I was when she passed away. I think I was like 12 or 13, and she'd been sick for a while, like not, I mean, in and out of the hospital, but not. We didn't like go out or travel or anything like so. Everything I remember of her was just like it was located in their house, or like if she would come over for Thanksgiving and Christmas and those things. Like our house was always where we had the family. So I guess for memories of that, it would just be like her being around. I say that as if like I didn't love her or anything. It's like she was kind of there. Like no, like I like.
That's what family is. They're just kind of there.
Yeah. I know that my mom can hear everything I'm saying right now. So she's and it's my mother's mother. So
maybe she'll learn. Well, we're all learning stuff about ourselves and each other.
I don't think it's anything that's necessarily a secret.
No, it sounds like you did have some. I remember. Yeah, it sounds like you had some fond memories though. Like
no bad memories of either of them. My dad's parents. I never knew my dad's dad. He died before I was born, and then his mom died when I was like 5, and she lived in Chicago. So I the only time I even remember seeing her is like visiting her in the hospital right before she died. So
so far what have we brought up? We brought up scary clowns, 9/11, recalling that day, and talking about our grandparents being in the hospital and dying. We are bringing the joy.
Comedy is tragedy plus time. Yeah, there is so much tragedy.
We are bringing the joy to everyone out there today. No, that's I enjoy hearing everyone's stories and journeys. What about in like middle school and high school? Like as far as like more like what kind of young person you were? Like what were you into as far as like music, the arts? Obviously, you couldn't really watch TV shows. It sounds like.
So, I mean, by the time I was in high school, I could. That was okay. By the time I was old, I was like old enough to like make my own decisions. Mom, that rule kind of dropped off by the time I was in like middle school.
Yeah, and you weren't you were a different person, so to speak, back then.
Yeah, I was a very different person back then.
What I was gonna say was that I forgot what your original name was. I remember your last name, but I forgot what your old.
You know my last name because it's part of my stand-up.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say what it was, but
okay. I'm not gonna.
No, I mean, if you forgot, that's like no, that's the goal. You know,
that's what I thought. That's what I thought to myself. I'm like, I forgot what her original name was, but then I was like,
that's true because I guess when you met me, I was still kind of interchanging between the two because I wasn't super comfortable or I didn't know like how to be comfortable in our circles.
Yeah, you're transitioning.
Yeah, and which I wasn't even like by then. It had already been a thing for a couple of years. It was just there weren't like visual results, so I felt really uncomfortable when I was around a new group of people.
Sure.
So I just was I would switch off. And then the last name was the last name until I guess that was over a year and a half ago now. I keep thinking it was last year, but I guess that was September 2020 that it
Yeah.
got changed. So I didn't get my, but it was a very long process because trying to change your name while there was a government shutdown for COVID is a nightmare process. It took me like 15 months to get a driver's license with the correct stuff on it and everything like that. So, yeah.
If it pleases the queen, can I be who I want to be?
Right. Anyway, back to your question now. Like the type of
Yeah.
person.
Who are you? What were you into back in the day? Who were you back in the day? What do you
Yeah, so
recall?
I was really involved in Boy Scouts. That was pretty much my entire life at that point. I played flag football for my elementary school, and then I was on my high school football team. I was the manager of my high school football team for my freshman year. And when I say manager, I don't mean like a baseball manager. I mean like a water boy.
Yeah.
And like equipment manager.
I've done some stuff like that too for various sports teams.
Yeah. And then my sophomore year, I was on the JV team, and I sat in pads on the sidelines the whole time. I got 4 plays in against Notre Dame Sherman Oaks. They did not go well. It was a 3 and out and a punt. And on, I think, both plays that were run, I was a lineman, and both plays that were run to my side were tackles for losses. So I did not make my blocks. The only picture that exists of me playing football is me missing a block. It's great. Yeah, I think I was a quarterback playing flag football, and then I got to high school and they were like, "You're too fat to play quarterback. You're gonna play on the line." And then they'd be like, "Why are you such a terrible lineman?" It's like, because I've never played this position before, and I'm like, quarterback and lineman are vastly different positions. So, yeah, my football career fizzled out pretty much because of that. But the main thing that I would do in my time was Scouts. I was a leader in my troop and other organizations for that. And then I started working at a summer camp for in high school. And that was kind of like when I arrived as a person. I feel like I was like a conglomeration of a whole bunch of really random shit with a few interesting things here and there. Like I remember as a kid, my first comedic impression I ever did was of a French person, because this was back, again, tying it to 9/11. As everything should be. We would love to make fun of the French, and my first impression that I remember doing was as a French person. It was like knock knock, les boo, les and that was my impression of a French person. I was like 7 or so. But then in high school, I started working at a summer camp, and that's when I started having like actual friends that I would hang out with, and figured out like that I was funny also, because that was, we would do campfire shows and stuff like that. And I love doing all those. And that was, that also was how I got into the music scenes that I was into. I was, as so many of us have done, I had a huge ska phase starting in high school, which I still enjoy ska. I don't like go to shows or anything anymore. But I had like a checkered tie and suspenders and all that stuff. I was a real big Fish fan. Yeah, that was the music scene. And then I'm also a big country music fan. That was my all-time favorite country music. So I grew up, I don't mean to sound like too much of a hipster. I was a Taylor Swift fan before like anyone else was a Taylor Swift fan, and now she's huge. And I associate like all of her albums with different parts of my life. So that was also a big influence. And then Elton John is also a huge influence on my life. That seeing his biopic literally changed my life, because that was the point where I was like, oh, it's okay for me to be like a little more flashy and the type of person that I am. Because like I was saying a couple minutes ago, I was just like unsure how to behave around groups of people I didn't know. And then I saw that movie and I was like, oh, I can just fuck it. Like you just be who you want to be. So
that's cool that art can have such a profound influence on people, even if it's just one movie or a scene within a movie, just a moment, just anything that can touch someone is just like really special. And it's hard to know or justify, or not justify, but know what's going to resonate with people and what parts of movies are going to resonate with people. But I guess that's why we make them, and that's why we consume them. Do you keep in touch with anybody today from either the Boy Scouts, summer camp days, or from like the ska scene, or like people from that
Yeah,
time in your
so I mean,
life?
it was a lot of overlap among all of them. It was basically like the same handful of
Sounds like it.
people, with a couple that were exclusive to certain circles, but it was like one big Venn diagram. Like we all had the camp overlay. Like some of the camp people I worked with went to the same high school as me. Some of them we went to ska shows, and then others we did other hangout stuff. They weren't like, and those are the ones I just enjoyed hanging out with. Like they were the friends that I had the more typical like growing up experiences with, like and unfortunately none of them live close to me, so these didn't happen super often. Like they lived all up in Palmdale, which is north of LA if you're not familiar. That I would like drive to their place, and we'd go to Walmart at like midnight and hang out in the parking lot. Like those were those friends that I had.
Everybody needs those friends. That's typical high school.
Yeah, no, you have to have at least
person.
one parking lot hangout friend. I feel like if you didn't do that, you're just missing out too much on life.
Yeah, you need someone that you can hang around and do nothing with, and that still be something.
Yeah, exactly.
What about the Boy Scouts? What jumps out at you as far as like either skills, or either life skills, specific types of skills, or just knowledge or wisdom that maybe you got out of that experience that you even still take with you today? Is it just you're good at tying knots, or does it go beyond that?
No, even which tied into growing up into doing like more some political stuff. Even when I was in the Boy Scouts, the stuff that I would do is a lot of paperwork and administrative. I was never that great of a knot tire. Like I knew I knew like a square knot, a half hitch. I learned a bowline like after I was done being in Boy Scouts, or like I'd been working at summer camp for a few years, and I feel like those are like the three that most people know. I was never good at anything like that, but one thing I did learn for sure was like leadership skills and working with committees and teams and things like that. That has translated a lot into the politics work that I do. I had a leadership position in Scouts, I think literally from like when I was 12 up until I aged out at age 21. So as either a specific leader of a position, or of the whole thing. The largest position I ever had was the chair of the I'm not going to get too much into the weeds here, but there's a subgroup within Boy Scouts called Order of the Arrow. I was the chair of that from an area in Southern California that stretched from like the Nevada border down to Orange County up to like Kern, Inyo, and obviously LA. But that kind of section of Southern California there was all like I was the chair of that.
Very
so
cool.
Yeah, so then that when I went into politics, they were like, do you have any, can you run this committee, or can you be on this meeting? And I was just like, yeah, I know how to do all that. And then I was a club president and vice, other leadership roles in college too. So all of that really translated there. And that helped me working with people a lot of times who were, it's for a lot of kids, that was their first like job or committee or any like first sort of responsibilities outside the house. So working with people who are a little less experienced, or just learning patience and dealing with people who you sometimes have to nudge a little bit. That was definitely things that I learned from that.
People skills and administrative skills and leadership skills.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. When you were like junior year, senior year, high school, obviously you said you went to college and even touched on some of the things you participated in college, but where did you think your life might be going as far as like career wise when you were like late in high school, or like
I thought I was going to go to the Air Force.
Or yeah, I was going to, either just plans for your future or plans to study certain things. You were thinking Air Force.
I was thinking of going to the Air Force. And the reason I didn't is because I found out my senior year of high school that I had a medical condition that disqualified me. So then by that point, it was too late for me to apply to college, and also too late for me to have been a good student for the last 4 years. So I just went to like my local community college for a year, and then transferred to Fordham, where I ended up getting my bachelor's and whatnot. But yeah, I I was still kind of in that neocon-ish mindset where I was like,
assumed.
and I don't mean to like bash the military or anything. I have respect for everything that they do. But yeah, I was either Air Force or Army infantry. I didn't even want to be like an officer or anything. I just wanted to like get in there and do Army stuff.
Yeah.
So
I don't got a problem with the military. I just don't like
yeah.
murder. That's what it is. I'm not a fan of
Right.
murder. I'm against people murdering each other, especially when civilians are being murdered. But that's
Yeah,
that's
I hadn't really been red pilled at
conversation.
that point yet, and all the stuff that was going on too. Like I knew that there was some bad stuff, but I was just like, oh, like, well, that we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing this. But that's not like all of what they do. And I
Yeah,
still
you gotta crack a few skulls to
yeah.
make an omelet, or crack a few
No, that
eggs
was
to
like,
make an
which is
omelet.
worse, this or ISIS, or I don't even remember who like the main enemy was at that point. I think ISIS was around, but
Yeah, it was maybe at that point.
yeah, this was like 2013. I graduated high school.
Yeah,
So.
this is 12 years into the Afghanistan war. So maybe the enemy
Yeah,
changed several times at that point. What did you study in college?
political science. That was my major, and then I dabbed in some other stuff. Political science was the major, economics was the minor, and then just other things here and there. Like there was one like capstone requirement that we had to take, and the political science department at Fordham was huge, so that class filled up like right away. So the only one that was left by the time I got to register was like a morality and film class. Which is actually interesting because we actually ended up watching a lot of like military movies. We watched like Zero Dark 30 was one of the movies we watched. We also watched a documentary about Abu Ghraib and things like that, but also others like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Jim Carrey, fantastic movie. And just that was a class that I didn't expect to like as much as I did, because I was like, oh, morality and film, this is going to be some like hippy dippy liberal bullshit. And then I'm not saying that like that made me a libertarian, but it made me look at things in a way that I didn't expect to, and not from a like I've been brainwashed by Democrats way or whatever. Because I was in the college Republicans at the time, but it was just like I started thinking about things differently, and then that was one really interesting class I took there. And then it being a Jesuit Catholic university, we had to take like philosophy classes and stuff like that too. I was like Arabic as a foreign language. I didn't really like I said, I wasn't really a good student, so I don't remember most of it. I used to say like I know how to write my name, but that's not true anymore because I don't have the same name. I could probably figure out how to spell the new one, but there's different letters in the Arabic alphabet than there are in the Latin alphabet. So yeah, I remember one time at the summer camp we had an Egyptian group come in and use our camp, and they were trying to pull a prank on me, and they were like, oh, like no, like go up to her and say this, and they would like give me a bunch of phrases like say this, and like go up and say it means this. And I would just look at them and was like, no, like you're full of shit. They're like, how do you know? It's like, because I speak Arabic, you fuckers. They're like, prove it. And I would like say something to them in Arabic, and they'd get all like super embarrassed because like, oh, they've been able to understand what we've been saying behind their backs this whole time. Like, I had no
Those
idea.
are some of the best scenes in movies, TV shows, even in real life and YouTube videos. When somebody speaks a language and you don't expect them to know that language, and then they understand it. It's like, whoa! Like all Americans always think anyone who's multilingual is some kind of wizard. In Europe, of course, everyone speaks 10 languages, but in the U.S., if you speak more than one language, or let alone 3, it's like, whoa!
Right.
Wizard.
Well, an interesting story about that. When I was in China, we were one of our days off. We were at this really nice hotel, and we all went down to the spa sauna area. We were just hanging out in the sauna of this hotel in Beijing, and there was like the four of us Americans, and then this other guy came in, some Chinese man, and we were talking about him, and we were not prepared for how comfortable everyone else would be with their nakedness. Which is like, you're in a sauna, like, yeah, you're often naked, but we were like in swim trunks or like our boxer shorts or whatever. Like we weren't doing that, but everyone else was just like, screw it. So we went, this other guy came in, and we started just like ripping on this dude's naked body the whole time.
Oh no.
We're just like, oh, look at like, I don't remember what we said, but it was not
flattering,
overly complimentary. And then after like 5 minutes, he looks at us, he's like, so you guys are from Los Angeles, eh? And we were just like, oh fuck. like not only because he identified that we were Americans, because obviously we were, he could identify like our like regional accent and our dialects and everything.
Doesn't sound like you might have said you're from LA. It doesn't sound like you guys were paying very much attention to what
we
you're saying,
probably could have also like we could have given some context clues to say like we were in LA, but yeah, no, this guy, we were talking about this naked man and his body, and then he was just like, oh yeah, I went to California business a couple of years ago. We were just like, well, it's been great. No, it's been great to meet you.
Maybe it's stuff he's heard before, and he's a very, very secure person, which is admirable. He just was happy to connect with strangers in a sauna while being naked and having you guys mostly naked as well.
Maybe.
What about I was gonna say just I'll let you kind of continue the journey and like from college to after college, and from conservative to more Republican to more libertarian, and we'll just kind of continue to go on your journey. You said you went to China at what point in your life?
This was the summer after college, so my first job after college.
And what job was that?
It just says summer camp counselor. My main job was
in China,
as an archery instructor. Yeah. So
wow.
So this Chinese group would use they would send troops, or not troops, but they would send groups to our camp here in LA. And they were like, hey, wouldn't it be great if you sent some of your people over to us so we could like make our own camp program? So I was part of one of the teams that got sent over to China to like teach them these, how to do summer camp, basically. So it was in the province of Beijing. Well, there was a couple weeks in the actual city of Beijing and like the outskirts, and then others in the greater province of Beijing, and then a couple, it was about like half an hour west or so of the Great Wall, and then another couple weeks in the province of Inner Mongolia, which is right in the border, right in this little triangle area border between Mongolia, China, and Russia. So.
And this was all over the course of one summer?
This was over the course of about 2.5 months. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Was that an overall positive experience? It sounds like
definitely. Yeah. No regrets. Thing. No regrets from that. Yeah.
And perhaps things were not as politically anxious. That's an understatement, but you know what I mean. I think the tensions were not as high. I mean, they were, but it was like, because I mean, this was during the Trump years too, so it wasn't like not all that long ago.
Yeah. But it was before the stuff. I mean, obviously, as far as we know, it was probably happening, but it was before the like Muslim genocides and stuff like that was a lot in the news. Like, if I was offered the position now, like I probably wouldn't go. I don't even think that I don't think my visa would even get approved. I think they'd probably do a search for things I've said on the internet. So,
man, yeah, what a crazy, strange time we live in. But that's cool that you had the experience, and I'm sure a lot of the people that you met were interesting and expanded your horizons. I mean, just because governments suck in many countries, it doesn't mean the citizens do, and we can have a lot to learn from each other, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was another thing too, is that you got to remember that just because our countries don't get along, like the people that live there, they're not inherently evil. Like they're good. There are good people who live there. They live where they live, and that's the life they know. They're not bad people by any sense. A couple like I found out one of the people that was one of the like adult chaperones that was there for a couple weeks was a member of the Chinese version of the NSA. So I was just like, so maybe she's done some stuff that I would fundamentally disagree with. But,
sure.
But the rest of them, it's like, no, they're regular people living their lives. Yeah. But it was interesting though to like interact with the public or just be in public, because everything was like, oh wow, this is so much like America, or like so like Beijing. There were a lot of parts that are a lot like New York, or like in the older parts, it reminded me almost like of Olvera Street in Los Angeles. But then it was also weird because you always kind of got the vibe that something was off. It's like, because you'd be having a normal conversation, then somebody would say something, and then like all of a sudden everyone's attitudes would change because like you mentioned like the Tiananmen Square protest or something like that.
Yeah, you said some kind of magic words that are like no
Yeah,
words or things that are not discussed probably more than anything.
yeah,
So when they come up, everybody tenses up. It's kind of like, I mean, maybe less so now because all the shit has hit the fan and everyone's showing their true colors. But a lot of the time, like I seen like people who argue and willing to share all their opinions on social media about politics. And then when somebody like will bring something up in a conversation, it's like, whoa, why are you bringing that up? I don't know. People act
yeah.
differently online and in person. What about when you
Mhm.
got back from China? Where were we headed then?
Well, I had an apartment in New York. I was rooming with a friend of mine from college. That only lasted a couple months. I wasn't able to get a job, and then all the money I'd earned from that China job ran out, so I wasn't able to pay rent, and the job prospect wasn't looking any better. So I came back to California, got like a seasonal retail job, then went back to the community college that I had gone to for a year to get a paralegal certification. So that, and then between that and working in retail, those were pretty much like the next. That was until like late 2019 or so, and then I got a paralegal job in 2020, and then COVID and everything happened. So yeah, pretty much once I got back from China, everything pretty much did the paralegal stuff, got the paralegal job, and then that was on and off what I did because of COVID pretty much up until September of last year. And then haven't really done anything since, which is when I finally got around to starting to do something with comedy. If we could talk about that, like you can
Yeah,
cut this part out, but if we could talk about that, that would be,
hit all these topics. Sounds good.
yeah. Because I had, when I was in the shower earlier, I was like, oh, what can I talk about? And I had like the whole, Jimmy Fallon late night not monologue, but like the couch spiel about like how I got into it or whatever. Nothing memorized or whatever, but so the last couple, since for 2020 at least, I've started trying to get more into comedy, which is something I've always been interested in. As a kid, I knew I was funny. I just didn't know that being funny was like a thing you could do. I thought it was just like, oh, like, yeah, that made me laugh or whatever. I remember the first stand-up routine I ever heard was my friend gave me his iPod. It was like an iPod Nano, like first gen, and he was like, "Oh, listen to this; it's really funny." And I listened to it, laughed my ass off, and I remembered what the bit was. I had no idea who it was, but I was like, "Oh, this is really funny," and like I love that. But in my head, it wasn't like, "Oh, like this is a really funny stand-up routine." It was like, "Oh, this is a really funny random audio clip that happens to be funny." I didn't know that it was like a whole genre of entertainment. I was just like, this is a really funny clip. Thank you for playing that for me. Now to go back to my life of watching the news all day.
Yeah.
And then years later, I heard the bit again, and I was like, oh my God, that's the thing that I heard when I was like 7. And what it was Dane Cook's bit about the Kool-Aid Man, where he was like how upset he would be if the Kool-Aid Man was to burst into his house as a kid. So that was the first comedy routine I ever heard of. And then when I found out that it was an actual genre, I was older than I'd care to admit. I was like 20. It was like 2009, I think. So I was like 14. And my mom got a new car that had Sirius radio in it, which was the first time that we'd ever had that. And she wanted something to play that would be appropriate for when she and I were both in the car. And it was like the family friendly Sirius station for stand-up comedy. And I remember hearing this was I guess if we were to talk about like influences that I've had in that area, we heard this one routine where I was weeping with laughter. I just couldn't control my body. I was laughing so hard at John Pinette. He unfortunately passed away a few years later.
Heavy set guy.
Yeah. Heavy guy. He was mostly about food and like his weight. That was most of his material, like raviolis and a nap while on the treadmill and stuff like that. And I think the routine that I had heard that day was his bit about like how he was at a gym and the trainer's telling him to like do push-ups and pull-ups. He's like, I don't do ups, I do downs. Sit down, lay down. Ups defy gravity. Gravity is law. I obey the law.
I recall this. I've seen this. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was like the first. It was the first time I was aware of stand-up as a profession, and I was laughing so hard. And I got out of the car, and I remember thinking to myself, like, that's what I want. Like, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to make people laugh as hard as I just laughed at that. Because I had always been kind of funny, and just playing, like, goofing around in class. When I was in elementary school and we'd have school projects, I would always ask if we could do it, if I could do a video project. And the reason for that would be that I could split the video presentation into two pieces. And then in between that, I could have a commercial break, which is my excuse for doing like a comedy skit. And they weren't like original things or anything. I mean, they were somewhat original, but largely just ripped off of things that I'd seen on cartoons. Like I saw a joke at a cartoon and I made a commercial out of it, which I learned later wasn't a commercial. Like I was like, it's a funny commercial, which I learned later is what you call a sketch. So I guess the first sketch I ever wrote was about was like a sombrero cleaning service or whatever. And the joke had been ripped off from a Jimmy Neutron episode, but I would always do it so I could just put those comedy sketches in my school presentation, because they killed in class. And I was like, oh, I want to be the funny person, because I wasn't attractive. I was a heavy set kid, and I wanted people to like me. And I was like, oh, well, I don't look good, but I'm funny. So I worked with that. And then when I started doing, so then that went on to the hearing the serious thing. I was just like, if I can make anyone laugh half as hard as he just made me laugh, that'll be the greatest party trick that I know how to do. And then it kind of grew on from there. This was a couple years before John Mulaney's New in Town came out, but then when I first heard that, it was my favorite stand-up special. It still is my favorite of all time. I think from like 2012 to 2019, I probably listened to at least one track off of that album at least once a week. And it got to the point where it actually started affecting my like speaking patterns. Because
I know this comedy can do this. I think I talked like Kramer for a year, and then I talked like Jerry Seinfeld for like the year after that. Like like we've been saying, you really do like mimic and monkey the things that you see and hear. Everyone in my middle school was talking like Beavis and Butthead for like 3 years straight. I mean,
yeah. Well, I listened to this John Mulaney album at least once a week. So then, like, when I would do stand up, I kind of started to talk like this, like, how you imitate somebody. I remember I played it for my best friend on a road trip we were doing just a couple years ago, and she was listening to it, and she's like, "That's you. That's how you talk." It's like, first of all, no, that's not what we were talking about. Just like, there are certain catchphrases that I didn't even realize I had like fully adapted in my own speaking patterns. So yeah, so he was like my favorite. I auditioned for the sketch comedy team at Fordham. My first semester there, I got a callback. I did not make the cut, and I know exactly why I didn't, because I didn't. I didn't really know how far I could push it or whatever. And I saw the first show and I was like, oh, like I was trying to keep it like clean and G-rated. That's not what I should have done. And also, like, I didn't really know what type of comedian I was. I didn't know what to write about. I didn't really have a voice, because the only thing I was at that point was like a straight white Republican male. I was like, there's no material there. The only thing I could kind of do was like the difference between California and New York, but that's boring. And then I also auditioned for the stand-up troupe. That didn't really go anywhere because, again, I didn't really have any material to talk about specifically. And then I kind of gave up on the stand-up one because I was like, well, that's not really something I'm good at. But then I auditioned for the sketch troupe every year. I never got a call back again after that first semester. But in my defense, it was largely because I had a very awkward social interaction with the captain of that sketch comedy team, where I told her I had a crush on her, but like, not in a way where like a normal person would tell somebody that they have a crush on them. It was like if I was roadkill and just was like, blah, 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 blah. that was basically what I said to her. I walked up to her and I was like, anyway, so you get what I'm trying to say, right? And then she was just like, no, I don't. And I was just like, yeah, you probably wouldn't. And then I walked away. So I never made it on the team back then because she was uncomfortable with me being around. I don't blame her at all. I was not super comfortable being around her for that either.
These interactions make us who we are, though, and we learn from them. And they're I don't know, something like that. We'll go with that. We'll go with that for sure. Wow, that's
so
cool.
I don't know. Not that she would ever see this, but Caitlin, if you see this, I am so sorry.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that's interesting to hear about your stand-up journey. How do we go from being a Republican to being a Libertarian?
It was just like it was really issue by issue, case by case. Certain, somebody would make an argument about something, was like, oh, that makes sense, and it was almost like how it started was the first couple attacks were attacking the right from the right. So I was very pro death penalty, like disgustingly pro death penalty as a kid, in high school even. And then somebody was like, well, you're a Republican, why do you think the government should be able to like decide who gets to live or die? And I didn't even have a comeback for that. I wasn't even like, well, it was just like, why do you think the government should be allowed to decide who like if they kill you or not? And I was just like, wow, yeah, you're right. No, I am against it was just like that quick. I was like, nope, yeah, I am against this. And then it kind of just, as it wasn't like over the course of a week or anything. It was a very gradual change, but
interesting.
I would start seeing more of those arguments where it's like, well, okay, hold on, I'm in favor of this, but why is it like this? Why is this happening this way? Some of it, there were a couple of times in high school where I think I had certain policy stances just because out of spite. Like there was every week my high school would have a week dedicated to youth who had life in prison without parole. And I just really didn't like the teacher who was like spearheading it. So I was like, oh, I'm in fully like, nah, like 15-year-old, keep him in jail for the rest of his life. And I think that was mostly just because of spite. Like, I don't think I actually believed that, but I would
just
sure as hell argue for it.
Rebelling against.
Yeah.
Just wanted to rebel.
I was rebelling at a pretty like left-leaning school. So I didn't do like the typical like rebel as a left-winging.
Oh, in your own way, for sure.
I rebelled as like an even more strict neocon.
Yeah.
And then just same with like gay marriage or whatever. Is like, oh, why do you think that gay people shouldn't be allowed to get married? And it was like, I reached a point where I was like, oh, I've just been saying what people want me to say, and I'm at a point where I can say what I actually think. I was like, I don't think that, because as a not as a kid, but like growing up, like I was attracted to some guys, and I was just like, and even knowing that, I was still like no, like it's immoral and wrong, and you're going to hell. And it was like, but you feel that way, and I was like,
that's hard. That's hard.
I'm going to hell then.
That must be that's such a hard thing for a kid, a teenager to deal with, those sort of like contradictions and things that are.
Yeah, I mean, and this was also, there were a lot of reasons for it too. Like I was a Boy Scout at an all boys Catholic high school in the year 2009, where basically in none of those areas was it okay, like culturally or societally acceptable to be anything tied to LGBT.
Times have changed.
Yeah, gays weren't allowed in Scouts. You got relentlessly bullied in high school, especially at all boys high school, because it wasn't like you could go hang out with the girls or with the gay kids or whatever. I didn't do theater, mostly because my grades were really bad, so I wasn't allowed to do theater. I would have done theater. So I just kind of, kept it bottled up and just maintained the persona of being like this Rush Limbaugh anti-gay type of person. And it was also, I mean, these were the days where we had, maybe you remember we had these commercials on TV with Hillary Duff saying like, hey, don't call things gay. Do you know what you're saying when you say that? Like, we had to have commercials of like people saying, don't call stupid things gay. So it was just like, because that was the times we lived in. It was what everybody made fun of. And you go back and like watch shows from that time period, and like not like Will and Grace, but like other there's like even Seinfeld, like the amount of jokes that they like, how awful George always feels every time there's even like the implication that he might be a homosexual or whatever. Like that was just like the worst thing that you could be. You know,
Not
and
that there's
they have
anything
to, like,
wrong
not
with
that there's
that.
anything wrong with that, but it was still like it was an easy punchline, so it wasn't quite, you know, something you wanted to admit to being a part of.
Different times for sure. How do we go from being someone whose mind is starting to be opened by and challenged as far as like being a Republican conservative to becoming like involved in the Libertarian Party, involved in something new and something different? Where how does that
Yeah, so I
go?
was I was in the leadership of my college Republicans chapter at Fordham, and I registered to vote, and by that point I had been like I become enough of a libertarian of all those like individual steps where I was like, oh yeah, I'll be a libertarian. And we didn't have a YAL chapter or anything. We are Young Americans for Liberty chapter. So the college Republicans were like the club for the Republicans and the Libertarians. And this was right before Trump became a thing. So I've been leaning back this whole time. So I was kind of a libertarian. I actually registered to vote as a libertarian in 2015. And that was largely because I was like, oh, well, there's a lot of bad Republicans out there. But it's just like, oh, he's just a bad candidate. Or it's like, oh, well, it's unfortunate he said that, but not all Republicans are like that. And then Donald Trump started to like get popular. And I was like, oh, shit, they are all like that. It wasn't just that like that one candidate sucked. It's like, no, like the base sucks, in my opinion. So I registered to vote as a libertarian, but I was still like, I believed that the GOP was salvageable. And then one thing led to another where it just kept proving to me that it wasn't. Like I had a friend who was the chair of the Cornell College Republicans, and they had this whole scandal because their chapter endorsed Gary Johnson over Donald Trump in 2016. And they got like disaffiliated with the state organization. And it was this whole drama. All the basically every New York school's college Republicans chapters got involved into it. I had op-eds that I wrote about it that got syndicated through different college or campus university papers. Like I had one, obviously, and I had a number of them in the Fordham papers about like why this was wrong or why you should vote for the third party or any third party. It could be Green, Libertarian, whatever. Like you don't have to pick one between the two. And then stuff that I wrote about Cornell that got syndicated into like the NYU paper. I think the Geneseo paper quoted me. SUNY Geneseo, if you're not on the East Coast, you might not know the school. But and then after college, I kind of just, and this was, so I graduated just a couple months after Trump became president in May of 2017. And then I kind of dropped off of politics for a little bit. And then in 2018, I was like, and this was, I think it might have been before I'd started paralegal school, or like right when I was just doing retail. I didn't really have anything else to do. So I went to the LA Libertarians website and was like, oh, well, I'll put my name on the volunteer list and like, you know, maybe get their emails or whatever. And then Angela McArdle sent me an email saying like, oh, hey, you should come to our meetup in Pasadena this Wednesday. And I sent an email and I was just like, oh, like it's kind of far from me, but you know, like maybe next time. And then like 5 minutes later, I sent her another email. So like, actually, you know what, screw it. I have nothing else going on. So I drove up to Pasadena from the South Bay of LA where I live. And I went to that one meeting. That was where I first met Angela McArdle, who is now my best friend. I love you very much if you're watching this. And then I kind of dropped off again because I was in school and had night classes and was busy. And then eventually I started getting active again and helping at tabling events. And then I was just like, oh, hey, we need somebody to run for these positions. So then I did. And then a couple months later, hey, we need somebody to be on the state executive committee. Do you want to do it? And I was just like, sure. And now I'm the vice chair of the Libertarian Party of California. This is all the course of like 3 years.
Very cool. Yeah. Like it
happened really quickly, and all just because I was bored and because, you know, it was fun to be able to hang around with people that ended up being my best friends.
That's great. So, it's interesting to hear how like, and not just you, but other conversations I have with people from all walks of life, where it's like the past and past skills and past experiences really do sort of culminate in a way that sort of comes full circle in a sense. Like you were talking about, oh, in Boy Scouts, you learn leadership and admin skills and organizing and all these things. And then boom, here we are, a decade plus later, whatever it is. And you're like, those skills are going to good use. What would you say is like the big, because you're describing Angela and these people you met through the Libertarian Party and the broader liberty movement as like some of the best people and your favorite people in the world, I think is what you said.
Well, if I didn't, Angela McArdle is my favorite person in the world. So I will go on.
She's up there on my list too, certainly. Certainly for sure. But what did you see differently hanging out with Republicans versus libertarians? Like what is it that, like, from a cultural standpoint or from like a social standpoint, like what is the major difference? Obviously it sounds like the latter a lot more, but like what have you observed?
Well, like the Republicans that I knew in like early high school or like late middle school, all people I still keep in touch with, like I'm in a group chat with them. We've been talking today even. They were more libertarian leaning. Like we were all Republicans, and they still, as far as I know, they're all still Republicans, but they were like Rand Paul Republicans.
Sure.
So like my view of what a Republican was pretty much like, oh, like they're all like Rand Paul. And this was also like, these were the years where you would go to CPAC and Rand Paul would win the straw poll or whatever. So it kind of seemed like that was the whole vibe. And then the friends I had in college, and I don't know if it's like, it's weird because like, I don't know, was I friends with them because this was their viewpoint, or was like their viewpoint the reason I was friends with them? It's like the people that I was friends with in the college Republicans all happened to be a little more libertarian leaning, not as radically as I consider myself to be. But they had a little more of the libertarian tendencies. None of them had any room to support Trump. None of them did. I don't know. I think they wrote in Evan McMullen. I think most of that friend circle who didn't vote for Gary Johnson. But then going to CPACs from like 2015 until I graduated, because DC was only a quick train ride down from New York, and watching like the freshman classes come in year after year, and they were all like radically pro-Trump. I was like, these aren't the type of people that I'm necessarily that I want to interact with. Like, because
you're talking
like,
about
not only are
I was going to say, you're talking about the freshman class of like Congress, or what were you?
Oh no, of college.
At Fordham, the Republicans at Fordham.
So like the freshman classes of these college Republicans kids, from, and well, not just my school, like from all the schools. And it was just like, oh, like this is, like, it's only going to get worse because these are the people that are going to be running it, and they're going to bring in more people like that. And then watching them, like I said, I wasn't out at that point, but watching them like oh like I remember one debate I got into this kid with, where I wore him down to the point where he had to like give up the argument, because the only response that he had left was like, because like screw Mexicans. It was just like, oh, why can't this, why no, say it to my, because I don't know if you could tell, and I didn't mention I am half Hispanic and I'm also obviously transgender, but it was just like, and this kid, basically we were talking about immigration, and I got to the point where he was just like, because Mexicans are bad people. And I was just like, it's like, no, say, it's like, well, I'm not gonna say it. It was like, no, say it to my face. Say why you think immigration is so bad, or stuff like that. And it was just like, oh, this is just what everyone is. So I know that's not true. I know that not everybody is like that, but it was just so overwhelming. And then I went to a libertarian meetup, and it was like, yeah, there were still some crazies. There were some,
I met some
conspiracy theorists who were like, oh, Alex Jones has been neutralized by the Zionists. And I was just like, that's an interesting take. I don't agree. But then other people, the majority of them had a similar view on like the nuances of things that I had, or like you could be economically right wing, but also support like gay marriage or like drug decriminalization, or things that I was in agreement with. And it was just like, these people are just like more enjoyable to be around.
Yeah, we take the live and let live to the next level.
Yeah, no, I take it. That's what I say. Is like, yeah, when I say all your freedoms all the time, and I mean that literally, and other people don't mean that literally. And that's just like, it's great. I don't want to be in your club though.
Very cool stuff to hear your political journey and hear about the comedy and some stuff about Angela. And congrats on your ascent within the Libertarian Party itself. You're the VP of the LP of California.
Yeah, well, vice chair, so I guess
Vice chair,
VC, but
VC, that's right.
Same idea, yeah.
Yeah, not VP, VC, but yeah, a vice.
Yes, I am the chair of vice. Anything drug or marijuana or sex related just all comes across my desk.
Dude, those are the best things for sure. What about why don't you anything else we need to cover as far as anything you want to talk about, whether it's comedy or politics stuff? Otherwise, you can kind of tell me what we're working on now, bring me up to date, and we'll go.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of comedy, I'm trying to do open mics. I was gonna do one last night, but it had to be like G-rated material, and not that. I mean, you've seen
You're
what
funny.
I do. Yeah, it's all good, but it's not, and it's not. I'm not like raunchy or like R-rated or anything, but it's not. The topics I talk about aren't necessarily G-rated. It's not like I curse a lot or ever. It's just like, if I'm gonna talk about sex in an adult mature way, but I'm still themes. Like, yeah, it's adult themes. So I didn't go last night, but I'm gonna try to come up with some stuff for when they do it next time. And that was a weird sound I just made there. I was gonna go and then and, but I said and.
It's okay.
So then, and stuff I'm working on now for politics in LA. I made a joke earlier that we weren't going to comment on the vaccines, but we are pushing a petition to overturn the vaccine mandate in the city of Los Angeles. That's not even a statement on whether or not you agree with, getting a vaccine. If you want to, that's your choice. I am not an anti-vaxxer in that sense. I just do believe that people should have the right to choose whether or not they get it. I feel like that should be a pretty standard thing. I mean, that's the way I view other medical procedures. I personally am pro-choice. I feel like it should be the person's choice. If they need to do this, they have their reasons for doing it. Hopefully, and same with vaccinations. And I have all my vaccinations. I'm not saying like I don't. I was like, oh yeah, fuck chickenpox vaccine, smallpox, all the others. Like I get them. I think that other people who aren't me should have the option. So we are pushing that in Los Angeles. And if I can plug the website, it is medicalfreedomla.com to find the petition. If you're an LA city resident, it is not like a change.org petition. People keep asking for links of where they can sign it online. That is not a thing that you can do. I'm sorry, but it is like an actual legal physical petition that needs your actual physical signature on it. So medicalfreedomla.com, you can find that if you are a registered voter in the city of Los Angeles, which includes most of the areas within Los Angeles that you might not realize are Los Angeles, like San Pedro or Westchester or things like that. So that's what I'm working on now.
How come you hate grandma so much? How come you hate all grandmas so much and want all grandmas
because
dead?
Mine died, and I just feel like everyone else should have to suffer that same pain.
That makes sense. I feel you on that one. No, I agree with everything you were saying before, and I'm 100% on the same page. And I appreciate you sharing that information, which sounds very reasonable to me. Maybe not reasonable for everyone, but reasonable for all the people who are not insane out there. Again,
and you and I have talked about this before. It's like, no, it should be. I think it should be a person's choice. Whether or not I think it's a good choice isn't even really the debate. So.
Yeah. Hopefully this doesn't get taken down from YouTube. We'll see.
We can cut that part out if you need. But.
I'm looking forward to challenging the algorithms and seeing what we can do. No, it'll be cool. It'll be all good. Where can people find you, follow you, all that stuff?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at @RachelaX_13. That's RACHILLAX_13. And that's pretty much what I am on everything. Instagram, Twitter, Venmo, if you want to send me money. I'm always looking for money. You can always send me money.
All right. Yeah. I'll think about it. Sounds good. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. Good stuff all around.
Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure I'll see you. We're recording this. What's today? The 9th. So I'll see you next week at the convention, the LP
Yes.
California convention down in Long Beach. That will be fun.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah,
be busy.
True. Yeah, I'll be hanging out and just whatever. And
you'll be having fun. I'll be working.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thanks.
You got it. Later. So there you have it. Episode 125 and my conversation with Rachel Nix. That was fun. I really appreciate her time, and I'm glad to hear 2022 is looking like it's going to be a great year for Rachel. And she's also hosting a comedy show that I'm producing upcoming. It's called The Sanctuary Comedy Show, and it's in Pasadena this Sunday, the 27th of February. I'll drop the link into the description for the show, for this podcast, for that. But anyway, for everything about the podcast, this podcast, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's at People We Love Podcast on Instagram. I'm at Adam Choid if you want to follow me. And I have another podcast, Tedeschi Trucks Podcast, all about the 12-piece blues rock soul powerhouse band, at Tedeschi Trucks Podcast on Instagram, TEDESCHI Trucks Podcast. Check that out if you're into that kind of music. But I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks as always, and let's talk soon. Peace.